closing weekend at Santa Anita. Remember, you can get clocker reports for the last few days of the meet every racing day at Santa Anita. And then we'll let you know once the Del Mar meet starts up. DRF.com, shop.drf.com, and you will need some help with these clocker reports and some of the races that we're going to look at. Barry Spears joins me to talk about the Santa Anita Saturday card. We're recording this one a little late. This is on Friday because I've been a little bit under the weather this week, so everything got pushed back. This happens as we get a little older, Barry, man. The sicknesses, they hit you a little harder, man, and they take a little longer to get over. So I'm still working my way through. Big thanks to Barry for being flexible with the schedule this week. But Saturday, Sunday, final couple days of the meet coming up at Santa Anita, Barry, and you and I were talking before we started recording. We, on horse racing Twitter, and I think overall fairly are critical of the racing in Southern California recently, the last few years, and at Santa Anita, I think in particular on the day-to-day with the smaller fields. But this year is a fun example of opening day. They were really big fields and good races. And on some of their biggest days, they have pretty strong size fields. And again, here, end of the meet, this Saturday card towards the back end, we're going to look at races 7 through 11. There's some quality in these races, some quantity, nothing really short and just, this is the only horse in here and just move on. So I had a good time looking at this sequence.
Yeah, it's really challenging. Everybody out there is probably trying to get a race in before that little break that's going to happen. And, there's a lot of maiden races, which is really good. You get those young horses, and those usually kind of yield bigger prices. So, this is a real kind of exciting pick 5 that we're going to cover.
And don't forget, there's also a big money handicapping tournament on Saturday, the Santa Anita Challenge, $500 entry. You can win NHC seats. And then there's seats for the closing day challenge at Santa Anita, which is on Sunday. So $500 buy-in. You can play live on track or with our friends over at Express Bet. Barry, let's jump on in and talk a little bit about race number 7, which is a Calbred maiden special weight race going 1 mile on the turf course. This one is for fillies and mares, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. If you were just looking at how these horses train in the mornings and workout reports and watching the works on XBTV, you would think that the 12 is like varsity versus JV compared to a lot of these fillies, just in the morning. And the reason why I point that out is because that's a tricky thing to do in a race like this where it's long on the turf, because what we see in the morning is short on the dirt. And it doesn't always play out the exact same way. But if this is the horse to start with in here, and I watched the works on some of these horses that are sort of young and I actually watched probably a lot more works than I think recently because I was curious on some of these horses, in the sequence here. Mm-hmm. And she's just way, way better than most of these in the mornings. But these horses that aren't working as good going short on the dirt, they might just be better suited for long on the turf, which is what this is. So there are some other horses in here I think you can get to, but we have to start with her because she has been favored every time she's run. So she's been a 5 of her 6 races. Every time she's run, she's been under 5-2. So the only time she wasn't favored, she was just over 2-1. And, she has run well in all of her races. She hasn't run poorly, but she does find different ways to get beat. Sometimes by good horses, sometimes by other horses who, haven't been as good. Honestly, like Ashley Sandcastle was 0 for 10 and beat her and ran by her. And Ashley Sandcastle had like minor awards and was fine, but we're just
kind of similar to this horse in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's tricky because like you said, these horses train on the dirt, but primarily this horse in particular runs on the turf. I'm actually kind of surprised they didn't switch to the dirt.
Take a shot with how good she's on the dirt
right.
so far. Yep.
But she ends up here, way outside.
And that's what's tough too, right? She's drawn way to the outside in here.
It's got to be a factor because she's had plenty of opportunities to win and just hasn't sealed the deal.
Against different fields.
Right. All kinds. Probably a field sort of similar to this last time. and she
Yep.
couldn't get it done. So I'm going to think that trend's going to continue, and I'm going to play against her at a big price, at a small price. Um, there's not really too many horses in here to like, uh, because if you look at it, a lot of these horses that are coming from Golden Gate just don't have the class to compete in a maiden special weight at Santa Anita. They probably have to go even in the state bred ones, just like this one.
Yep.
So when I looked at this, I eliminated those horses right off the top because you can even see in some of the past performances where,
It's
like,
just too
uh,
much.
right, you go with let's say Miss Will, number 7. She's unfailed at Golden Gate in the 6 furlong on the synthetic. Goes to the turf at 50,000 at Santa Anita and gets thumped pretty badly. Didn't run a particularly bad race, just wasn't good enough. There's a few of those in this race.
The 3 was
Um,
facing open maiden specials at last year, right? And then came down here, faced Calbreds, and which wasn't close.
just wasn't
Even
even a
improving,
factor, right?
running better races, but just still wasn't close.
So, I'm tending to think horses with very little experience might be the better way to go in this race. A horse like Hollywood Penny, who doesn't look all that great pedigree wise or anything else, but didn't run that bad.
No, not at
And the
all.
stretch out will probably be a good thing for this horse. At 8-1, you kind of have to give a horse like that a shot, in my opinion. Same thing with Ms. Club Cali, who looks like the logical second choice here. Um, Getting blinkers off, but it's such a tough race because all these horses are doing a lot of different things. I'm going to go with horses like these two. Tiny Prancer may be one to include, but hasn't been out for a little bit. It's really just a tough race, man.
So
I
let's
really don't know where you go after you say, hey, I don't really like the 12.
see. That is a great way of of analyzing the race because you can not like a favorite, but then start looking through the rest of the field and you start wondering, okay, who else do you go to?
Right?
And
Who
then is
who
that a
who else is there?
situation, right? Is that a situation where you do the very rare kind of thing where you're like, all but this horse? That's easier to do in a field of 6 or 7 than it is in a field like this, where
Right.
you're going to go 11 deep to start a pick 5. That's just not doable for a lot of people. And so you have to pick a couple horses, I think, if you're going to try to chuck that horse out, who are the ones you want. I will try to talk you a little more into Tiny Prancer. And I agree with the other two that you pointed out. I think those were my 3 that you just mentioned: Tiny Prancer, and then the Hollywood Penny, who was very solid, and Ms. Club Cali, who's also in this race. So the one we're watching right now, Tiny Prancer's the 5, Ms. Club Cali is the 12 in here. So I was keeping an eye a lot on Tiny Prancer in this race, and every time I do this, I want to say, "Hold me closer, Tiny Prancer." As she's not far out of it early, kind of mid pack, and then she's able to secure a nice spot down on the inside. So I like that she seems kind of handy. She's a horse that they were able to kind of move around and place her in that pretty good spot down on the inside. She's 4th. She's sitting in that tier just behind the leaders. She's within 2 lengths. She's saving ground. She's waiting for room. And then what happens sometimes, you're rolling the dice here. Do you get a spot? Do you not? She's waiting. She's waiting. Nowhere really to go. And she gets kind of shuffled a little bit on the rail. She kind of keeps coming. She's sort of holding her position here, kind of looking for room. And then she kind of gets pushed back even a little bit farther because the 4 drops back right here. And now she's a little farther back. She kind of has to shift around, watch her duck back inside, a little bit green here. Why I thought this was intriguing too is because I think she starts really stretching her legs best, like right here. She really
Deep
starts,
stretch.
figuring things out, and not in a I'm going to run right by you way, because her dam one going a mile on the dirt, and then she's a half sibling to Maracuja, who's a grade 1 winner on the dirt. Like, this is what I love about the features of the formulator. So we just
Yeah.
looked at the replay right there. Boom. So that in 1 second, we're done. We checked out the replay. We can take a look at the race and see that the horse Stop Digging, who finished in front of Tiny Prancer, came back and won. It actually has won 2 races since then. Came back and crossed the wire first, and then in the maiden special weight, and then stepped up and beat winners. So Stop Digging has won twice since finishing in front of Tiny Prancer, and Tiny Prancer beat 4 other rivals in that very same race. Then you can go and take a look at the pedigree real quick and see that the Dam won going long, and immediately, as soon as she stretched out, she was just better. You can see all her best races came going longer. And then when you go to the direct siblings, Maracuja was a grade 1 winner going a mile and an eighth. She was a horse who we just watched always. We're like, oh, yep, she's a horse that's going to be going long horse. And she would just run into other really nice horses like Clairiere and Malathot and like other very good horses. Candy Charger won going long. Island Song is the only one of the 5 siblings to win that didn't win going long. So you got 4 winning siblings that all won going long. The Dam won going long. And the horse visually looked like a horse who ran pretty well and will probably be a little bit better going long. I kind of like that they gave the horse a little bit of time, like a month after the race, because it may have been just a perfect sort of, let's get the fitness, because this is what we've wanted to do all along, is this horse to go longer on the grass. Now you get Blacker back, and you can see, I think what he's probably done is time that once he came back from being off for the suspension, he had probably had some of these horses ready to go that, they'd been working with and ready for when he was able to come back and put things back in his name again. So I think this one's going to run pretty well in here, especially if you're trying to beat a horse like Run a Mile in My Shoes, who on paper, almost all of her races are better than anything anyone else in here has run. But those are the scary ones, especially when they're drawn way to the outside. Nothing's changed for her. There's not a change. There's not a cutback. There's not an equipment change. She's actually parked a little bit farther. As you pointed out, it's not like that last race was stronger than this one. That was not that was not the strongest race in the world, and she didn't get the better of that group. So I can understand anyone wanting to take a shot against this one. And for me, it would be with the 6, the 10, and then I would probably give Ms. Club Cali a mention too, who you pointed out, the 8.
Yeah, and I think, I would throw the 11 in there, be a Goldfish also.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Didn't run that badly and
And
kind of got the worst of it in that April 21st race. So, there's definitely ways to go in this race.
the only thing, and
Especially,
my only reason why I didn't get more into her was the pulled up. Then she comes back. Well, she comes back off the being pulled up, and she works May 2nd, May 11th, May 18th, and then she's off again for a little while. So I was wondering if something might have happened, like if she's maybe just not.
Yeah, it might be a physical issue
or she's maybe
her
just
back.
short now. Maybe they figured it out, and she might need this to get there. But I agree with you. She was one of the horses that I would go to, especially if you're looking for unders in the bottom of exotics, and that will. My point will probably be kind of moot, like Joey from Friends says, like what a cow says. It's a moot point, right? If she's 15 or 20 to 1, it's irrelevant. Those kinds of things are things you mention when horses are shorter prices. Like if she's up there at 20 to 1, it's built into her price.
She'll probably be that, especially with that line in there. People tend to dismiss horses that do that sort of thing, and
yep. And she didn't get bet in really any of her last races either.
No.
So
I'd give her a shot in this race.
Me too.
I mean, this race isn't very strong at all. And
no, if you're spreading,
a little bit of improvement in her closing, it could make all the difference. She could definitely get in the number. Win-wise, obviously you want your price, but
so on
March, consider.
On March 23rd, she's 1 length behind Run a Mile in My Shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Not even a length. And this horse will be, even
3
money.
times the price, yeah.
And this horse could be what we're saying, maybe 20 to 1. So you just play games like that. And that's where maybe there's a work missed or something like that. That stuff only matters when horses are similar prices and you're trying to weigh things, positives, negatives.
Hairs, basically.
Exactly. You don't need to poke the kind of holes in the big long shots as much, because that stuff's already built in there. Don't talk yourself off those horses as much. Okay, my man.
Well, you talked me into the Tiny Prancer, and I talk to you into be a gopher. So
Exactly.
here we go.
Exactly.
We'll
Back
take
and
those
forth.
4 and move on.
Let's do it. Let's do it as we move to race number 8. This one, mile and a 16th on the dirt. These are maiden special weights in here. This one's a little bit of a tricky race because in these following races coming up, we'll have some horses that are training really well and horses that I think maybe they've had a little bit higher hopes for than we've seen so far, because nobody in this race has run incredibly impressive. I mean, I guess that's a little disappointing to say for the 7 Field of Magic, who's been good in back to back and was defeated Vlahos. But maybe besides that horse, some of these other horses haven't quite lived up to their billing yet. Winterfell was one of them because he's been training really well all along. He was second to McVeigh last time out. McVeigh won that race by 7, so he was second by 7 lengths, and then Wise Counsel was third in that race, and Wise Counsel was beaten 11. So really strung out field that day. The horse that we've seen the most from has been the 7 Field of Magic, whose debut was sprinting 6 at Ellis, then has gone a little bit longer since 6.5, and then 7 was second behind Vlahos. That was a very good effort that day, as Vlahos came back to finish third in the Pat Day Mile. Vlahos earned a 98 Beyer speed figure when he won that race. Third place finisher out of that one, Ball Don't Lie, came back to win a maiden special weight with a 97 Beyer speed figure, and then he finished second in a stakes race following that. You also had a horse named Promiso, who came out of that race to win a maiden 50 when he flipped over onto the grass. So productive race, strong field there when he was behind Vlahos. So Barry, those are the major players in here. Talk to us about who some of the horses on your radar.
Yeah, I actually thought this race was really straightforward. I really don't think the winner's going to come beyond the top 3 choices: Field of Magic, Winterfell, and Canada Gate. The winner is probably going to be one of those 3 horses, I think. I do find it interesting that Juan Hernandez is on Canada Gate going long for the first
This
time.
horse is going to go to the lead.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. I
Yes.
mean, it's very clear that this horse has some speed and probably will go to the front. And they might not catch this horse, to be honest with you.
So
Just the way that Bob prepares his horses, and this spot is chosen rather than maybe a 7 furlong race, or if
and
there's a lot of races that this horse could have ended up in, and this is the one they ended up with. Um, I think this horse is probably going to be a lot better than what he's shown on paper, and probably give Winterfell, all that horse can handle in the stretch, as well as Field of Magic. So, I think the favorites are going to dominate this race basically.
So Canada Gate, I was just confirming on this one because what's cool, you can watch a lot of these workouts on XBTV. Canada Gate was working on that June 2nd work with Parenting, a horse that we'll talk a little bit more about. Canada Gate was on the inside. Canada Gate was outworked that horse.
Absolutely did, and Parenting's already broke his maiden, right?
Yeah. So Canada Gate's overall form is really kind of sneaky. The horse was in that same Vlahos race, and that debut, Vlahos just absolutely freaked that day. And anyone can lose just to another good horse when you show up, and that other good horse is just really good. Parenting is 2 for 2, won the Affirm Stakes, and earned a big speed figure in doing so that day. So Parenting is the horse that beat the 3 Factory Drive too. So we can pull Parenting up just to take a look as I talk. So this is the horse that he was outworking in the mornings and showing speed inside, and then just keep on going. And this is the June 2nd work there. And then in the one prior to that, you can see he's working with Reincarnate, the older horse,
yeah,
and doing a pretty good job with that one, keeping up with that horse And inside of that horse, again, like getting the better of Reincarnate. Um, I've been extremely impressed with what I've seen in the mornings from this horse, Canada Gate. And I
Yeah.
think they just are going to go.
Yep.
I think they're going to go and they're going to make everyone. The way that you pointed the race out is funny. I had it almost exactly the same. I thought 6, 7, and 8 were going to be really tough. I thought those are the
Hmm.
horses. There's one price horse I'm going to include
The two.
with the 6, 7, 8. It's the 3,
Oh, the three.
Factory Drive. So coming out of the race with parenting. So if we look at this horse's start of the race, Factory Drive's the number 2. I thought it was a pretty impressive effort because this horse just completely misses right after the break,
Yep.
gets
Backs up.
right here, the 2, and then watch the 2. It almost looks like something goes wrong with like the equipment or something. This horse gets completely outrun and is back like 15 lengths out of it, almost to the point where you're going to get distanced in a race, you know? And the winner, parenting, is the 6, who's
On the
sitting
engine.
just right on the front end, who was just behind and then now pushing through. So watch the 2 now, who's not even on your screen, continue to just stay inside, start to close nicely. And I'm not worried about if this horse is going to win the race. But if you're just watching the 2 in a different set of circumstances, this horse moves up the rail in a tight spot, getting dirt kicked in his face right here, goes to the inside, keeps coming. And then again, when things get tight up the inside, as the 9 is sort of backing up there, he's able to push right through that horse as well. I thought that for a lot of horses where they're never going to win the race, and watch the 2 flying up the inside with the orange, you're not going to, and this horse is galloping out nicely. That was going 5.5.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Now
the distance is the key here.
for
I
this
think the
one, right?
stretch out would do this horse a lot better because you see how it took him a little while to kind of get into rhythm and kind of get
And
up to full speed. But that makes him a closer, which I don't like in this race. Even though it's going to be hot pace, I still think these horses on the outside are just faster.
and they might be better. What I
But
do
Factory Drive is definitely going in my stable mail no matter what happens in this race.
and what is nice about coming out of that April 26th, they come back in 2 weeks, and you can see, like, in the mornings when you're watching his works, you can see them and them working with him and him showing more and more progression, becoming more like mentally stable. He's a first time gelding now. Now they get the stretch out. They're coming out of that live race with parenting wins. His dam was one of these horses too, Barry, that you remember because
Hmm.
she was supposed to be really, really good from the very beginning. She was one of those highly regarded horses who was bet first time out, second time out, third time out. And then she finally put it all together, but she just was never really able to kind of hit the level she was supposed to. She was favored in the Martha Washington, didn't get there. They tried her again against Grade 1 company in the Ashland. She just maybe a little precocious early on and then couldn't quite figure it all out. But she was very highly regarded. And Factory Drive is the first for her. So I agree with you that the 3 outside horses are the horses to beat, especially with what I saw from the 6, who's not a horse that on the running lines you look at and go, oh, wow, it doesn't match what you're seeing a lot of times in the mornings. But that April 6th race too, though this horse is a little bit better than it may have looked. Just kind of got stuck down on the inside with no room and then kind of kept getting pushed back and didn't really get a chance to go on. I figure they're going to try really different tactics here and just get aggressive with this one, buddy.
Yeah, I mean that's always possible. I mean that's why they run the races.
Yep.
Uh, always like long shots, and this horse is probably going to be around 10-1, I would think. And it won't be a bad play, especially in a pick 5 situation, because that's probably a horse that less people are using. Everybody's probably going to use the 6 and the 8 for sure, but horses like that blow up these pick 5s out there in Santa Anita because you're going against a Bob Baffert horse, and
Yep.
that makes a lot of difference in these sequences.
One will try to get a little aggressive down there. We'll see what they'll do so that can impact the pace of it. Barry and I both feel like the horses to beat to the outside. Threw it a one downfield, maybe a fun one to include with the 3 factory drive and some of your late exotics. Let's move to a mile and a quarter down the hill turf course to start and up and around. The number 1, Divan Propos, comes in from France. Another horse who, if this horse shows up with an A game, he's better than pretty much everybody in this field and what they've been doing. What is a little tricky about it, Barry, is he has shown speed in his races. In the mornings, they're taking him back though. So maybe they just feel like, yeah, his speed won't really work or translate as speed over here. Let's just sort of retrain him to be more of a horse that can sit. And if that works, I think he's one of those horses that they ship in. I don't worry too much about a horse like this coming off the bench first time. What I do worry about is the mile and a quarter, because that's where he's been vulnerable going this far. His wins have come a little bit shorter, but he does get Lasix for the first time. I mean, we have to start with him because he's 9 to 5 on the morning line. There aren't many things to knock about him other than the price, the layoff.
Yeah, I really kind of doubting, or not doubting, but just questioning the competition this horse has been running with in France. It's okay
Yeah, he's not
class
been
wise.
facing like top level horses.
Right. So I'm not so inclined to take that 9 to 5. I'm sure the horse is very well meant in this spot. First time France, usually the French horses are probably partial to softer, or you know, turf courses with give in it, rather than really hard, firm turf courses like you usually get out in Santa Anita. So, I mean, if that's the knock, then that's what it is. I don't know how much of a knock that really is, but it might be enough for me to go against this horse.
He's the key to
Um,
the sequence too, because this will be a single for a lot of people in a lot of things that they're playing. Because just what what we were talking about in the 7th race, it reminds me a little bit of that in the sense that
mhm.
the rest of the field, there aren't that many really enticing horses individually to go to. As a collective, you can pick out a few different horses. I didn't find all that many that I was like, oh, yep, that horse is going to run a great race in this spot. But I agree with you. There's still enough to knock about that. The one at a very short price. And in this type of a sequence, these are the horses you're trying to usually you want to beat if you can.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And the two horses really kind of jumped out to me as possible upsetters here. Midnight Joe Star is probably going to be second, third choice in this
yeah,
spot, and I think this horse has the right kind of running style. Likes to go long. Went down to Turf Paradise, and went way long a couple of times. And I think this is just this horse's bag. You know what I mean? Like this
yeah.
horse likes to go long on the turf. This is what he wants to do.
Also, a
The
horse
other
named
one,
Kennebec who had
oh
won
yeah,
5 out
Kennebec,
of 6 races.
just going
So
long,
it's a
and
really sharp horse at the time. So, and when you see the horses that go over to Turf Paradise, sometimes that was happening a lot more recently in Southern California when there're just not as many races.
right,
There's not as
exactly. They
many
needed a
days.
spot.
They go there, they run earlier in the week. There's turf races. And if you go and run in a stakes race like this instead of running in an allowance race in Southern California, and what does happen, the speed figures are just going to generally be lower coming out of there. So
Yeah,
when you can
and
go
actually,
back,
it's not too bad. I
no,
mean,
they're
that horse
not
is
at
running
all.
pretty good.
And when you go back to last year, you can see in a similar spot just like this, March the 9th, going a mile and a quarter in a first level allowance race in a tough spot, Midnight Joe Star wins. This is his trip,
Yeah, this is what he wants
right?
to do. Yeah.
Going along like this. So
Hmm.
he's in the mix there too.
And then the
You had one
six,
more, right?
the
Go ahead.
six. I think the six is probably going to be the controlling speed, and sometimes they can slow this race down so much that it'll give a horse like this a really good chance. or at least even, even a win. I mean, I'm not really sold on this horse as a win prospect, but there's situations where you see these horses that probably aren't as good going this far that get the trip because they're going so slow. And this horse actually ran this far way back when in June last year, and kind of spit the bit out in the grade three. And this isn't that kind of race.
No.
These aren't really graded stakes types. They're ungraded stakes types. And I think this horse can hang with this group, and probably will be a big price and on the engine probably by himself. I don't
For
really think Goldeneye really wants to lead. I
yeah,
mean, they
that those
tried
are
it a
the
couple of times and they quit. The horse
that's
just
what's so
stopped.
weird because he feels like he should be better there, right? Or like that's what they would want to do, but it hasn't really worked well for him. It's with Maldonado. They did it repeatedly. He was able to sit just off with Joel that one time and kind of fall right into it. The two that were the wild cards for me were, I mean, the five is obvious. We mentioned that one. Were the two and the three, just based on the pace. Are those horses that can just be sitting close? I didn't know about on the lead, but I think you nailed the other horse. 2, 3, and 6, I think, are the ones who are going to be forward. Let's see what Timeform US says. It's always cool when you have the all access past performances like this. You can click over to Timeform US, look at the pace projector, see what they have. Yeah, and they agree with us. They've got the
Yeah.
6 on the lead with the 3, and then the 2 right not too far behind.
See, I do that a lot just to see if what my
It's a good way to know if your handicapping
exactly.
is like
Eh,
accurate or not. And look,
Yeah.
this doesn't, and what people have a hard time with is the result doesn't always change what the right way to handicap the race going into it was after, right? Just because some of these
No,
horses
I
don't
mean,
do those things there,
right.
it's not always like, oh, they weren't fast enough for this. Sometimes it was intent or rider decision, or a horse had a slow start and they didn't get there. But this is it's a great tool to help you, especially if you're learning and you're someone and you purchase these all access past performances. You can bounce back and forth. You can do your handicapping in the formulator, and then you can use the Timeform US when you need help like this. See who they like. Look at some of their ratings. Look at some of their descriptions on stuff. And in particular, I think so many people are always interested in the pace projector and how it has things playing out.
Yeah, it's really cool. And like you said, I use it as a learning tool and as a handicapping tool. So it's just, having all these things at once right in front of you is just invaluable.
Yeah. Let's put a bow on race number 9. So the horse to beat, coming off a long layoff, coming into the D'Amato barn for the first time. Horses that Barry and I think are very worthy if you are trying to. The 5, Midnight Joestar. The 6, Birth of Cool, who could be out front, winging it, taking them as far as they want to go. I thought the 2 and the 3 are interesting horses who could be sitting possibly right behind the leader, maybe getting a trip and maybe falling into a nice spot. Look at race number 9 there at Santa Anita. Let's move to the 10th race. I was reading through. I've been referencing and talking about workouts probably a little bit more than I normally do, because in this sequence there are a lot of these young horses that don't have as many races to look at. So for me, someone who loves to watch the replays and find stuff there, we're having a lot of these where there's only a bunch of first time starters, but what can I watch? I can watch some of the works on XBTV, and the 11 has some funny ones, Hope Road, and the workout reports for this horse were just
Phenomenal. It's-
unbelievable. You can get workout reports for these, as I showed you, the Clocker reports at drf.com. And the 11 Hope Road is a horse who, first off, is training really well in the morning. So that's what we were just joking about. You can see the works there, 58 and 1, 46 flat a few works back. And she's raced 3 times. Her 2 losses came when she was second in her debut, and then she lost to Tamra, second in that race too. And then in her 3rd start, something went wrong. She's in the Del Mar debutante, put a line right through it. She's off. But she's a 3-year-old daughter of a horse named Marley's Freedom, was a really nice horse. Earned 1.2 million. Marley's Freedom was a really nice. Once they found out she was a really good filly and mare sprinter, that was her home. Real solid in that division. And Hope Road is the first for her. So she's now in the Baffert barn also. And that's why you see those works probably going a lot faster than they would have before. So she's in a barn that's very good with these younger horses. She's now 3, so she's not 2. But plenty capable of getting horses ready off the long layoff. She showed talent when we saw her. She's shown ability in the morning. She has a pedigree to do this. She's one to start with, because if she does run to some of the morning works, she is a really nice filly, and she could, one of these days, she's going to crush a field.
Oh yeah, she's absolutely gonna, and it might be this field.
It might.
Right.
It very well might.
It might be this field, but I mean, you have to consider other horses because
there's other nice horses in here. That's the thing. It's
yeah,
not
that's
like,
what I was gonna say.
that's
These
the
these
problem,
aren't any
'cause
slouches in here.
no, not at all.
And there's
The horse
other
right next to her
directions.
is legit. One Magic Filly. She's
Now,
been
I
fast.
I looked at that horse too, and I think that horse is probably better meant
Going
or better
longer.
off going longer and on the
I agree.
grass.
I agree.
I think
But
that
she's
one
got
is kin
ability.
to a horse named My Philly Twirl,
Yep.
who ran down here at Gulfstream and won quite a few races, kind of tailed off, and I think they laid that horse off. But
Mm-hmm.
um,
Was like that,
I,
going long on the grass.
yeah, I think that's horse is meant for that.
I
But the
agree.
one I do like from the D'Amato barn is Judicious, the 7. That one has a couple of siblings that won early, and this one's been training up a storm. And I like the steady diet of the 5 furlong workouts,
Yep.
rather than the 4 and 3 kind of variety. Um,
And this
you
horse
know,
is
this
training really well
training
too.
up a storm.
And you know what? This horse was training with Divine Propos, the horse that we mentioned in the last race on June the 9th. That race was with that one who's training very, very well too. And I think that you're probably going to get speed from this horse. They'll be going
Yeah,
fast.
yeah,
Just in the
I think
mornings,
so.
from what I've seen. And it can always be a little bit different. There's ability, but they've been fast in the morning with Judicious. I mean, that is what is difficult about the race. I mean, from a starting point, you start with the outside horse who's the horse to beat, but any of these horses, like you see in those strong races at Gulfstream, this is a good race. You're scratching your head, like, where have these horses been for a lot of the meet? You know what I mean? Like, most of these horses, why didn't we get a couple more of these races? If the rail draw could be really tricky for this horse, but Normandy Queen, the barn, you can take a look. Mark Glatt, over the last couple of years, has become such a good just trainer and barn overall, like everything. And the two of the things that are the most difficult for barns to win doing, Barry, are first time out and off of a long layoff. Because it's just really difficult sometimes to get your horses truly fit to race if they're not racing. It's hard to do. Some can do it, and the best can do it. And the ones that do are usually ones that can probably ask their horses for a little bit more in the mornings because they have more horses. They can push them a little harder against each other, or they just have more stock overall. You have a little bit less. You're a little bit concerned. You don't want to push the horses to go as hard. You let them kind of get back into condition. So Glatt, he is awesome off of long layoffs. And now with first-time starters, if you're just going over the last 5 years and betting every Mark Glatt first-time starter, you're a positive. $2 is turned into $2.35. Those are the stats that trainers don't usually do well with.
No, they don't.
The long layoffs and the first-time starters, and that just shows you how he has improved his barn so much over the last few years. And if you just take 2024, it doesn't really look flashy, but he's won with 3 of 14 this year, 5-1, 5-1, and 5-2. Yeah,
Not bad.
like
Not bad at all.
you'll take that. One every 5, and you're winning at not shortish prices. And this is a horse who's working really well. barn that's been doing well with the first time starters as of late. It's the rail draw that in a strong big field like this, that is really tricky. That's what would be my knock. I mean, the 3 is a Baffert firster, Philippa, who she obviously has been training very well in the mornings. Got all of these horses. Aurora, the 6 is bred for more for the grass. This is one I would think for the grass, but there have been a bunch of races this year run at Santa Anita where 5 horses in this field would have been favored in those races.
Oh
Or
yeah,
like,
easily.
you're like, wow. Yeah. And that just shows it's a strong race. And
You
it will
know,
all,
I was gonna say that there's one horse that
please
another
mention.
worth mentioning is the one Normandy Queen.
Oh, yeah. 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 That's
I
where we were
think
going.
this
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
yeah, I think this one has a has that. I think this is the right spot for a horse like this.
Yep.
And it's hard to say because you don't have form to look at. But this horse has been training up very, very well. The only thing that would you would demand your price for is having the rail draw. But I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal unless obviously something crazy happens and Tisma's Paradise like just slams into this horse, which is obviously always possible. But having that other horse, the other Baffert horse, Philippa, outside of the 2 is probably the best thing because this horse can follow. And if the pace is hot, I think this one might be in a good spot to pick up pieces late.
I had the 1, 11, and 10 for my 3 if I was going to use multiples. Barry had also mentioned a couple before in the
The
7,
7
Judicious, who's super fast. The
and the
who else?
1. That's
And
it.
the 1. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
So I
had
mean
1,
those are the
1,
ones that
10,
are on
7, 11.
our radar here. Really strong maiden special weight race number 10 at Santa Anita. Barry, let's close this out for Saturday. Let's move to race number 11. We have a scratch of the 1 Ziski is out. So the 2 Quality Wins will draw the rail. Quality Wins gets to put a couple starts together after race and then layoff and then races and then layoff. And so second start at the level. But again, this is a horse who's burned money even against better. Obviously fits with this group, but the rail could be a little tricky for him. The number 9, Bartholomew, was the one that I thought was going to run well in here, Barry. I like the pattern for him cutting back from the mile now back to 6 furlongs. You can see when he went from the mile and an eighth back to 6.5, it gave him the ability to sit off just a little bit and then finish. And I think now mile cut back to 6 furlongs. I think he'll be able to have just a little bit more punch in here. The drop to 50 can put him over the top. So I think he's going to run really well in this spot. Talk to us about some of the horses you like.
Yeah, there's a few that I like here. I when I looked at this race, I kind of got the idea that this pace might heat up really quickly up front, and that's for the horses that I'm going to select, that's probably a really good thing. I'm going to start with the 10 and the 13, both out of the
Okay.
Phil D'Amato barn, and I think they're going to be kind of right in the thick of it, but being able to close into a fast pace. And this horse kind of did that back in October 1st, Sea of Cortez, and just missed. And I think the cut back to sprinting is probably what this horse wants to do. They're using a nondescript rider in Efren Hernandez, who's very capable. And then the 13 classically is kind of the same situation. This horse ran a pretty good race back in February 2023 at this same trip, and then he went long and kind of got lost in the shuffle. Now they're coming back down in claiming price. This race sets up well for a horse like this, as long as he's not too wide coming around the turn. And I think this one will have to get used a little bit more to try to get better position than the 10. But I think they'll be able to pick up the pieces. And another one that I think might be on the radar and kind of the makes no sense situation. It makes no sense, so it makes sense. Is the 5 Storm Off?
Yeah, I was trying to get in. I really wanted to get into Storm Off a little
Yeah,
bit.
because this horse is out of Get Stormy. Obviously, that horse is just love the turf out of an Artie Schiller mare.
Because
But
she's bred so well just for the turf. There's nothing really direct to dive
yeah,
into,
and this
but
is kind of the first sibling. I mean, the first foal, and you're not really much to go off. But the idea that this horse attracted Juan Hernandez makes all the difference, and knowing how Peter Miller is in turf sprints makes the difference. And I'd give this one a shot in a race that's kind of wide open at 8 to 1. I don't see any issues with including this horse in.
so yeah, let's see who else. We talked quality wins a little bit. Storm off. I used Legitify last time out. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, this course they put right back on the front end on the drop, and now the blinkers come on, and I wouldn't be shocked just to see the horse run fine again on the front end, or just at least be a pace factor in here. I think this is a much better level for this horse, and they do have some ability. Where else are we gonna go? Yeah, I think we hit on
Yeah, I
a lot
think
of
I
the
think this is the race out of all of them is most likely to yield a pretty decent price, and that's a good thing, especially going into the last leg.
races 7 through 11 on Saturday at Santa Anita. So, Barry, my friend, you work on going in circles on Big Mondays with your partner, Chuck Simon. And recently, we have seen that Chuck has been dealing with some health issues. Why don't you talk to us about that? And I think there's a GoFundMe going around right now that I just wanted to pull up to give everyone out there a chance that might know Chuck. Maybe they didn't hear about this, or maybe they saw it come up a little earlier in the week and they wanted to, they got paid or later in the week. And I was sick. I kind of forgot. I'm glad I just remembered a little earlier and I was able to donate because I was out of it the last couple of days. And I was like, oh, I'm glad I remembered it before you and I sat down. And I told you I wanted to mention this at the end. So tell us a little bit about it, and it'll give me a second to pull it up.
Yeah, my buddy Chuck, he basically kind of handpicked me to be his co-host on Going in Circles when he had the idea, and we had talked about it back right about the pandemic, because we were just bored at home, and he's one of the best people I know, to honestly. Gino is up there too, but
Oh, man.
he's going through a real tough time with his illness right now. I'm not going to get into specifics about it, but trust me, it's definitely serious, and he is definitely needing our support and help. If it's monetary, great. If it's not, that's okay too, because we want to get behind him and give him the confidence to know that he can, fight and come back from his illness. There's a lot of posts on Twitter. It's one of the things that's really remarkable is how horse racing Twitter can be just a battlefield most occasions, but the outpouring of support for Chuck has been phenomenal. The outpouring for support for me when I was sick, the two times I was sick, were just outstanding. And it just shows how the community of horse racing in general sticks together when we're when we need it. And you know everybody puts their differences aside and just kind of gets behind somebody, and you're doing that for Chuck, and I hope that continues throughout this whole process. Everybody's
And
been great, reaching out to me, asking me what's going on, and I'm thankfully I've been able to give some information and things like that about how he's doing. And right now he seems to be in okay spirits. It's going to be a long battle, but glad everybody's behind him.
the bills don't stop too. They
No,
they
they
keep
don't.
coming in,
They
even
don't.
even with insurance, things that aren't covered by insurance, things that are out of your program. Um, Even if you have the best of the insurances and stuff, when they don't stop. They don't stop coming, even years and years and years and years and years down the line. So anytime you can help someone who's dealing with really, really serious health issues and you have a few extra bucks to help out, I joked with you. I said I feel like Chuck is kind of like my in-law. because you're like the one in we're sort of related by you're the middle, you're like the connector between us, and I've never really had many conversations with Chuck, a few interactions back there and forth, but I think we're connected both by like our genuine care for you and our respect, I think, for each other because of you. That
And
so
you're hoops fans, so
Oh no,
that's
yeah,
always a
and
bonus.
absolutely. We'll talk some ball. We'll talk some ball too. We love NBA, but yeah, I just have never had the opportunity to really truly talk with Chuck all that much. I know him mostly through listening to your shows and through online. So yeah, anything that
I'll
anyone.
say this, a lot of people when people mention Chuck, they mention me right after. And that's an unbelievable honor. He's such a
That's
great
very cool.
person, great guy. It's just amazing. How people are stepping up and being so supportive and helping him out in his time of need.
Barry, my man. Hope everything goes well for Chuck. You keep us all posted. And
Absolutely, I will.
just wanted to make sure that anyone that was watching this, if you have a minute and you know Chuck, or you have a few extra bucks, maybe you had a good score, you could send it on over and help, because lots of medical issues coming that way. Good luck to Chuck. Barry, buddy, thank you. We finish up here with Santa Anita this weekend. And so then Southern California will take a little time. They'll be off at Santa Anita for a while. There'll be some racing at Los Alamitos, and then Del Mar will pick up in July in about a month. So there won't be quite as much in Southern California. Barry and I will be kind of bouncing around the country. We'll focus on wherever the big races are. Like always, maybe we'll pick out some best bets, or usually we pick out a sequence to go through. My friend, thank you again for being flexible with me this week and helping out with my schedule. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you to everyone out there, and hope all of you have a really nice weekend. Good luck with your plays. We'll be back again real soon here. That's what G said. Subscribe on YouTube and check it out anywhere you get your podcasts.